I live in a big city on the equator that imports a lot of our produce. Food is at the heart of Singapore's culture, but it's easy to lose track of where our food comes from because takeout is just so convenient. I'm trying to reconnect with the heart of my culture through my garden and my home. Welcome to my high rise homestead. It's been a while since I stuck the end of a supermarket sweet potato in water and let it sprout, and now the plant is running out of space in its pot. It took me a while to get the hang of figuring out when a plant needs a new home, but I've since learned that the most telling sign a plant is running out of space is that it will start needing much more water than it used to. This is because the roots have filled out the pot and there's less empty space for the soil to retain water in. Harvesting sweet potatoes is very simple. Just cut the stem, and the potatoes are usually right under the soil next to the stem. When I was learning about the Second World War and the Japanese occupation in Singapore in primary school, we learned that locals were encouraged to plant sweet potatoes and tapioca to supplement their diets because of rice shortages. The way it was presented made it seem like all people ate was just that, starchy tubers. It was not until much later that I realized this alone could not have been a balanced or sustainable diet. Of course, sweet potatoes did not join the local diet only during the war, but had already been an integral part of kampong life for decades prior and would remain so until urbanization took over most of the island state in the 1970s. Sweet potatoes originated in Central and South America and were most likely first brought to Southeast Asia by the Polynesians in the 12th century. The hardy plant has since settled into the Southeast Asian diet from its underground tubers to the tips of its shoots. I started my sweet potato plant in early July by submerging the end of a sweet potato, cut side down, in a glass of water. Once new shoots or slips began growing from the eyes and the potato end started growing a robust root system, I transferred it into soil and left it alone for about 10 weeks with lots of sun and daily watering. Now that the tubers have been harvested, I stuck the older woody stem sections in a glass of water to grow roots to start new sweet potato plants with. The stems of the sweet potato are coated in a fibrous outer layer, which has to be peeled off by hand to expose the tender flesh. In the past, this task would have been relegated to the daughters of the household, the invisible labor that goes into getting all the nutrition that can possibly be gotten out of the ground onto the table. Today, we pay for this convenience, and no one even thinks to look for the kitchen helper in the back of the Char stall doing the mind-numbing job of peeling sweet potato leaves hours before the kitchen opens for service. I fry about a teaspoon of chopped dried prawns on high heat until they are fragrant, then add the stems, followed by the chopped sweet potato leaves, and let them wilt, finally adding Sambal belacan, prawn paste chilli. For nearly 40 minutes of work, I ended up with only one person's portion. In this day and age, when vegetables fly in from all over the world, pre-washed and pre-chopped in sealed plastic bags, I think this speaks to how much more we have now and how nutritious sweet potato leaves are that people would be willing to invest this amount of effort for such a small addition to the table that doesn't fill the stomach very much at all. Contrary to the impression I got in primary school, supplementing the Singaporean diet with sweet potatoes did not look like whole sweet potatoes, steamed and eaten plain. It was chopped finely, mixed with rice, and served with other dishes, mostly vegetables, eggs from the kampong hens, and fried Ikan bilis. I had hoped that my grandmother, who was a little girl when war came to Singapore, could tell me more about what it was like to grow up in a rural village in those times and their relationship with the land, but she was hesitant to share her story for fear that it might be inauthentic. As traditional farming practices left people's awareness with the arrival of the convenience of urban public housing, so our ancestral stories are also starting to fade with the women who fed our nation, bowl by bowl of sweet potato rice. Maybe my grandmother's experiences do not align with the national narrative of endless steamed sweet potatoes and tapioca, and only after 1942 but never again after 1945. Her life story certainly doesn't line up with the exhibits of pure gold Kerongsang, lavishly embroidered Kebayas, and fine porcelain kamchings that the museums say our culture is made of. But my city is made up of nearly 6 million stories, and each one is a lived experience that I believe needs to be told. Today, my attempt looks like a rough recreation of what one meal might have looked like for my grandmother, scavenged from whatever the garden gave that day, and the remnants of what little she feels qualified to tell.